I would echo Peter's words. None of you are all good. I wonder, do you feel faint when you have to renew your motor insurance? Do you feel nauseous every time you fill up with fuel? Yeah. Do you find the annual MOT gives you a headache? Well, you might have coronavirus. A weasel goes into a bar. What can I get you, says the bartender. Pop goes the weasel. Heather got a first picture there. This is my step ladder. I never knew my real ladder. Gemma and I are engaged in this long-running battle to have the longest-running talk series, and now Gemma, as you know, has resorted to going to one verse a month. You know, I can't compete with that, so I give in. Gemma, you will. So today I'd like for us to look together at 1 Peter 3:8 to 4:11. It's been a bit of a while since we last looked at 1 Peter, so I thought perhaps a quick refresh might be good. And so far, Peter's talked about what an amazing thing God has done in us. This salvation thing, this thing that He has done, that He is doing, and that He will do in us. There was the invitation to come alongside God, to be holy as God is holy, to become like Jesus, and to do as He did, as we subject ourselves to one another, to be servants, to be slaves to those around us. And in today's passage, Peter encourages the young church, as suffering comes, as it will, as they grow in their new lives in the midst of a hostile culture, as suffering comes, so Peter encourages this young church. We've got another picture there. I wonder what constitutes suffering for you. These are three things that make me suffer. Aubergines. Oh my goodness. I'm not fond of aubergines. Radio 1. It's not good. And then a slightly weird one. I'm ashamed to tell you this, but sort of bare, uncovered cardboard sets my teeth on it. It's quite unpleasant. But Peter in our passage is encouraging the new church as they suffer as a result of being different, because of their faith. So verse 8. All of you have unity of mind. Be of one mind. I was kind of wondering what that might look like. Do we all like the same food? Quiche and baked potatoes is good Christian fare, isn't it? Do we all like the same food? Do you all have the same opinions? Oh, you think that too? That's what I think. Is having one mind becoming Christian clothes? And I don't think so. I think we're seeking to have one mind, in particular the mind of Jesus. We're to follow Him, to follow where He leads, and slowly we start to see the world as He sees the world, to see others as He sees them. And do we look and think the same? I don't think so. But we have the same mind. I thought a great simile, the right word? A great simile is an orchestra, where each member of the orchestra looks and follows the conductor, but each plays a different instrument, and they each play different notes on their different instruments. And if it all goes well, the result is this wonderful, harmonious thing. The sum is greater than the individual parts. Everyone is different, but the result is so much greater. And I thought that was a great simile for that, just together with one mind. We face suffering so much better when we're together with one mind. And then verse 9, do not repay evil for evil or reviling for reviling. I thought Peter's perhaps saying that, I suppose it ends with us. We don't pass suffering on. So often in life, suffering and wrongdoing is passed on. It's passed down through generations, through families, isn't it? You know, the abused go on to abuse. The bullied become bullies. Corrupt leaders are overthrown in certain countries by idealists who then go on to become more corrupt than the person they've overthrown. And Peter says, you know, this is not for us. We absorb the wrong done to us, and we should turn it into a blessing. This is what like a God-transformed life looks like. Bad in, good out. Bad stuff in, good stuff out. Have the same mind as Jesus. Jesus, who absorbed all of that, as Bruce was saying, all that misunderstanding, that brutal mistreatment, and in turn brings healing and forgiveness and peace with God. And I wondered, am I hanging on to some hurt, something in our past, some mistreatment from years ago? Are you hanging on to something? Well, Peter says we need to let it go and not pass it on. That said, I hate aubergines. I hate aubergines, but I love Les Mis, the musical. Anyone else with me? Oh, I really, yes. Mary does. Thank you, Mary. I'm sure you know it well. The hero of the whole thing is someone called Jean Valjean. And as a young man, Jean Valjean pinches some bread because he's hungry. He has very little. And he goes to prison in Toulon for a very, very long period. And in Toulon, in the prison, he becomes sort of brutalized, I guess. And on his release, he's an outcast. He's a convict, known by his prison number, 9430. And he can't get lodgings because he's a convict. He's got this badge. So he has to sleep on the street. And then it might be the true hero of this story comes along, a man called Bishop Myriel. I think we have a picture of Bishop Myriel. And Bishop Myriel invites Jean into his home, and he feeds him, and he gives him a bed. And to pay him back, Jean nicks out in the middle of the night with the bishop's silverware. He runs off in the middle of the night before it's day with his silverware. And the following day, the police find Jean, and they bring him back to see the bishop, along with his cutlery. And the bishop does something truly amazing. He says, it makes me a bit weepy. He says, "Thank you, officers. Thank you for bringing him back. Jean, you forgot these 2 candlesticks. I meant you to have these 2 candlesticks. Thank you, officers, for bringing him back." And then off goes Jean Valjean, and that becomes the spur for his life changing. He stops becoming this brutalized criminal, and he becomes this man who with one false start, in case you watch it, he becomes this man who just brings grace and healing and forgiveness into every situation he comes to. I have to remind myself it's a story. It's not real, it's a story, but it's a fantastic thing. It ends with us. Verses 10 to 12. In 10 to 12, Peter verses Psalm 34. The blessing that comes when we turn from evil and do God. And it's the second time in our passage that Peter quotes from Psalm 34. He also quotes about how if indeed you've tasted that the Lord is good in 2:3. So Psalm 34, it's all about how God delivers those that live how God intends them to live. He delivers them from their suffering. And I imagine as a good Jewish boy, Peter had probably learnt all the Psalms off by heart. And I'm sure he knew Psalm 34. And we know for sure that Peter spent 3 years with Jesus, absorbing all that Jesus taught him and his example. And here Peter's he's trying to encourage these new believers as they face this new situation. They're living up in northern Turkey and they're facing suffering and opposition because of their new faith. And he's thinking, how can I encourage these new believers? So where does Peter go for his advice? He goes to the Bible. It wasn't the Bible then, but he goes to the scriptures, Psalm 34, and he joins that with his lived experience of what Jesus was like. He goes to scriptures. He joins that with his lived experience of what Jesus was like, what he knew of Jesus, and the result is this book, this letter that we have, 1 Peter. And I thought, what a great model for us all. As we face different situations, as we face new life experiences, where do we go for advice? Where do we go for help? Well, we go to the Bible. We look at the Bible. What does the Bible say? What's my experience of Jesus? We marry what the Bible says with my experience of what Jesus is like. And there's our advice. That's how we move forward. I have another. This is my step aerobics choir. I've never known that. Sorry. Next, verses 13 to 17. What if I'm doing my best to honour God in the way I relate to friends and families and relatives and those around in my community, and it's not going well? I'm misunderstood, I'm misrepresented, I'm criticised. Peter, in our passage here, says in essence, tell me about it, doesn't he? He doesn't give an excuse, he doesn't give a reason. He just says, this is how it is. This is Peter's lived experience. And he says it's better to suffer for doing the right thing than to suffer for doing the wrong thing. Peter was there at that final Passover meal that's the first Good Friday, when Jesus said in John 15, if the world hates you, know that it's hated me before it hated you. If you're of the world would love you as its own. This is Peter's lived experience. To follow Jesus causes riots. It causes you to be thrown in prison. This is Peter's lived experience. He offers no apology or excuse. This is how it is to follow Jesus. And I thought, this may encourage the churches in northern Turkey as they faced persecution, as they started out in their life of faith. But as I read it, it kind of worried me slightly. Peter is saying, this is how it is. This is just what happens when you're a Christian. Peter just assumes you're going to fall out with other people when you're trying to live out Jesus' example. And I was thinking, I get on quite well with other people. That's not my experience. And I think, well, maybe it's a symptom of a problem in me. Maybe I'm not being distinctive. Maybe I'm liking something. I'm not following Jesus in some area of my life. And so it's almost perhaps a call to me to look again and to rethink my priorities. Am I salt that's lost its saltiness. And that might be true of you too. Peter assumes suffering for your faith is inevitable. And its absence might be a spur for us to think, where am I not following Jesus? Verses 19 and 20, the next one. So these 19 and 20, these verses are the sources of all sorts of controversies. There are loads and loads and loads of interpretations. Did Jesus preach in hell between his crucifixion and his resurrection? Anyone know? If he did, who did he preach to? Was it to disobedient people, people that were disobedient during Noah's time? Or was it disobedient spirits from Noah's day? Anyone know? Did this preaching take place in hell? Or did it take place in some other intermediary place, some sort of purgatory type place, some place of imprisonment prior to the final judgment? Anyone? I know what we'll do. Let's break down into small groups and role play. We're not going to do that. I thought it might be good to remind you about suffering this morning. This is what the topic is about suffering. So a little timely reminder there. We're not going to do that. So I must confess at this point, I didn't lose much sleep trying to interpret these passages. Loads of people have spent loads of time trying to decide what they're all about. I was speaking to Heather, I think it was a week ago, and we decided, we were talking about a similar passage, and we decided that I have a Janet and John approach to interpreting the Bible. I don't know if you know Janet, you've got a picture, Heather, of Janet and John. Janet and John. If you were learning to read in the 60s, like Paul and I were, you read Janet and John. And here's page 2 and 3 from Janet and John. This is Janet. This is Janet. What more do you need to know? And I think I have a Janet and John approach to the Bible, I'm afraid. So bear that in mind now. This is my Janet and John version, okay, of that passage. In the days of Noah, the vast majority of people had no time for God. Noah, prompted by the Holy Spirit, demonstrated to everyone around him, society around him, the reality of God's coming judgment. The judgment was coming. The flood, the storm clouds were gathering. And he demonstrated the coming judgment by building a giant boat, the ark, God's means of salvation. But the people around Noah mocked him and refused to believe what Noah was saying. They refused to believe in the judgment and in the salvation. And in the end, only 8 people were saved, Noah and his family. And I was thinking, wouldn't that be a great encouragement to this young church as they faced sort of a hostile environment around them, as they told others around them about God's coming judgment and God's salvation in Jesus. And as they build this kind of new body of believers, this new thing called the church in northern Turkey, while around them, people around them refused to believe, refused and mocked them. I thought, what an encouragement that might be to this young church. Back to verse 21. Baptism corresponds to this. So Noah's was a physical demonstration of God's truths. And in the same way, baptism is a kind of a physical sign to others of spiritual truths that work in us, the baptized. Our old lives have sunk beneath the waves of judgment, the floodwaters. Our old attitudes, our old priorities, our old values have died. And then the resurrected Jesus pulls us out of the waters of judgment into everlasting lives with him. Baptism is a demonstration in the way that Noah's life was a demonstration. And like Noah, our new lives speak truths about what God is like, what Jesus is like to the people around us. And then if we jump back to verse 15, it says, be prepared to give a reason for the hope that we have. So when people ask us, why are you concerned about the storm? Be prepared to give a reason. Why do you waste your time? Why do you waste your Sundays building a boat? Be prepared to give a reason for the hope that you have. I think with the picture of Noah. I don't know if you can read that button. It says, well, so much for the unicorns, but from now on all carnivores will be confined to sea birds. Have a get the next bit there. So we're into chapter 4. 4, 1 and 2 is important. It's really important. As in suffering, as in all things, Jesus is our example. So in the middle of the agonies of the cross, as Bruce talked about before, in the middle of the agonies of the cross, Jesus, he reaches out to others, doesn't he? He reaches out to Mary. He reaches out to the soldiers. And ultimately submits himself to God the Father. In the middle of that terrible time of suffering, he submits to God and he reaches out to others. In the middle of our suffering, great or small, Peter says we can do the same. We can reach out to others, submit ourselves to God. And then he says, if we're able to do that in the middle of suffering, if we're able to do that, to follow Jesus, then the power of sin is broken. The problem with sin is it makes us focus on ourselves, or suffering rather. The risk of suffering is it makes us focus on ourselves, doesn't it? That kind of, oh, woe is me. People don't understand what I'm going through, me. It makes us focus on ourselves. Why is this happening to me? Someone help me. Me. But if in the middle of the suffering, Peter's saying this, in the middle of suffering, if in the middle of hard times, we can push ourselves out from the centre of our universe and bring God in. Say, I submit to you, God, and bring in the cares and concerns of others. Peter's saying, then sin loses its power over us. We can bring back God into the centre of our consciousness in the middle of suffering. And then Peter says, if we're able to do that, I'm no longer controlled by my appetites, like those Gentiles in verse 3, who constantly pursue more. Drunkenness, orgies, drinking parties, lawless idolatry. A quick tip, if you're reading verse 3 and thinking, oh, interesting, it's bad stuff. So you need to go away and rethink your priorities. Peter's saying, this is not a list of things for a Saturday night. This is bad. Okay, not good, bad. Verse 3. Verse 4. We may be maligned for not joining in, but says Peter, just as in Noah's time, the storm clouds are building. Judgment is coming. But this judgment, this second judgment, will include not only those that are living, as in Noah's time, but also the dead, those who have already died. 4:6. And this is another tricky bit. Again, there's lots of interpretation. So, just a warning. I'm going down the Janet and John route. For this is why the gospel was preached even to those who are dead. The questions are: is Peter suggesting that Jesus preached to those who have died without accepting God's salvation, the salvation that God offers? Do they get a second chance, in effect? I think not. Janet and John, I think not, because in Luke 16, Jesus says, he tells the story of a rich man, doesn't he? The rich man and Lazarus, the poor beggar, both die. And then the rich man is in torment, and he sees Lazarus being comforted in heaven by Abraham himself. And he calls out to Abraham, calls out to Lazarus. And Abraham says, none may cross from hell to heaven. None may cross from hell to heaven. So could Peter in verse 60 be contradicting Jesus? I would imagine not. So perhaps might a more reasonable interpretation be that the gospel was preached to Christians who have now died. Christians will still have to suffer a physical death. They will still have to go through that process of dying. They're not exempted from that, but their spiritual selves live on. They need not fear the coming judgment. So final bit, we could probably put the urn on now if that's okay. So the end of all things is at hand. Therefore pray and love one another. We've got the next bit. Verse 11. Oh no, so go back, sorry. Therefore, verse 7, the end of all things is at hand. Therefore, be self-controlled and sober-minded. Peter's encouraging this small group of new believers meeting in kind of workplaces and in their houses. They're facing persecution and misunderstanding, and this is kind of a fragile, vulnerable group of diverse people, and they're the basis of this gospel thing going out into the world, aren't they? So Peter's encouraging this fragile group of diverse people, and so he says to them, for the sake of this gospel, we need to stick together. Or God's rescue plan will stall in northern Turkey. We need to stick together. And Peter knows keeping this group of people together and on message will be a real challenge because people are ultimately annoying. And everyone comes with their own agenda. In 2,000 years, not much has changed. We all come to church with our own agenda. Sometimes, just sometimes, other people can be a bit annoying. So Peter says, love one another earnestly, because love covers over a multitude of sins. I wondered, have you ever been, this might be a while ago for some of you, ever been in a restaurant with your child at, I don't know, age 2, something like that, and they start banging on the pushchair or the table with a bit of cutlery, and they bang and they bang. And because it's your child, you can tolerate that for a good 10 minutes, can't you? Be patient, darling. I know you're hungry. You've got a good sense of rhythm going on there. Now I'm on the next table and I'm thinking, you've got to do something like that, quick comments. I'm going to murder it. Love covers over a multitude of sins. And the same in church, love covers over a multitude of sins. And then 4:9, show hospitality. So Peter's saying, I think church needs to be more than Sunday. It needs to stretch beyond Sunday. We need to invite others into our lives beyond this meeting, beyond the church service. And this verse kind of made me laugh a bit, because it says, show hospitality without grumbling. I was perhaps imagining the headlines of the day. You imagine the Daily Mail of the day saying, head of church in Jerusalem admits having other church members for a meal is a pain. He's saying, don't grumble. It's going to be a pain. It can be annoying, but we need to do it. We need to invite other people into our lives. Don't grumble. And then 4, 10 and 11. Almost there. As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another. So two thoughts. You're all gifted. You know, every one of you is gifted. You're a gifted bunch. You all have something to offer for the rest of us. You all bring something to church that the rest of us need. You're a gifted bunch. And secondly, when we come to church, we perhaps need to come with an attitude of, what can I bring? And perhaps, Sunday morning, down that attitude of, what can I get? It's more like early on Sunday morning to think, what can I bring? And then 4:11, Peter seems to suggest that those who speak and those that serve, it seems to see as some sort of distinction. So maybe people that speak perhaps don't have to serve. I don't know. I don't think he's saying that for a minute. I think what he's saying is that we all come, we all serve, whether you're stood at the front, whether you're sat in the middle, whether you're at the back serving, we all come to serve. And that's why we come to church. So in summary, Peter says to our church, or across those thousands of years perhaps, he says to our church, a bit like Noah, live out the truth you know about Jesus. And in doing so you offer the people around you that ark of salvation from the coming storm. You offer that place of refuge, that place of salvation to those around you, to the society around you. But don't be surprised if they don't listen, if they criticize, if they mock you, if they misunderstand you, just as they did to Noah. And then good advice for anyone who's living in a boat and is confined. Just love one another, be kind to one another, be of one mind, pray for one another. And then I've got a final picture. Anyone know this is
Transformer.
It's a stepped down transformer. You never knew my real down transformer. So, Bruce, you're on the phone.